The three candidates for next SNP leader have met in their first televised debate. And it was brutal. And that was partly because of the format, which included candidates cross-examining each other. This is Kate Forbes, Humza Yousaf and Ash Reagan going at each other on STV.
Humza, you've had a number of jobs in government. When you were Transport Minister, the trains were never on time. When you were Justice Minister, the police were strained to breaking point. And now as Health Minister, we've got record high waiting times. What makes you think you can do a better job as First Minister?
On at least 2 occasions during the hustings, and then you repeated it again this evening, you said that you're not as smart as Nicola Sturgeon, and if there was a way to be found, she would have found it. So why do you think that you can succeed where she's failed?
The question for me is, who do our opponents fear? I believe I'm the candidate that our opponents fear with the plan that our opponents most fear.
I think the person that their opponents would fear is the person that has a plan to get independence.
You say you're the only candidate that can persuade people who voted no. In the first week of your campaign, you had people who voted yes, leave your campaign. MSP after MSP. You've had many people, particularly from our LGBTQ community, say they won't vote for independence if you're the leader. Forget persuading no voters. You can't even keep yes voters on side. So after you've ripped up the deal with the Greens...
I haven't said that I would rip up the deal with the Greens.
Yes, you said you've made it pretty clear that you wouldn't work with the Greens.
They've said that they wouldn't work with me.
If you let me finish my question. So you've said that you would reject the Greens. When you do that, and it comes to passing your first budget, who will you cut a deal with first? Douglas Ross or Anna Sawar?
1 in 4 children are in poverty, as I've already said. What's your plan to reduce that? And do you not think it's an outrage?
It absolutely is an outrage. And that's why I cannot stand here and tell the people in the SNP to keep voting for us and voting for us and voting for us with no plan for independence in sight.
Literally, candidate for SNP leader. But part of it's been, obviously, they don't have complete power, right? Because they don't have the same kind of tax-raising powers that Westminster has. So when it is duplicitous when you get Tories in Westminster saying they've destroyed the NHS because, you know, the state of the Scottish NHS has a lot to do with funding decisions made in Westminster. But to see these leadership candidates basically say, why should anyone from the SNP vote for us? My favourite one there was, you've said you won't continue with the coalition with the Greens. It's like, no, I haven't. They've said they won't continue in the coalition with me. It's like, that doesn't make you sound particularly amazing either. Very, very risky, one could say, for the SNP to be airing all of this dirty laundry in public. You've literally got the finance minister telling someone else, when you were in charge of transport, the trains didn't run on time. You're now in charge of the NHS and everything's a complete mess. This is the finance minister, the equivalent of the chancellor in Scotland, basically telling her cabinet colleagues that the government they're all part of is absolutely rubbish. Media reactions to the debate were pretty uniform. The Scotsman ran with this. SNP leadership contest. Nicola Sturgeon says she did not watch brutal SNP leadership TV debate. Potentially, that was a good call from her. Couldn't have been too relaxing watching that. Meanwhile, the right-wing Scottish Daily Express had this. SNP torched themselves and their record during bare-knuckle brawl televised debate. And Scotland's first pro-independence newspaper, The National, said this. SNP activists say damage done to party after first TV debate. Now, after the bum fight, Scottish Labour wasted no time turning the SNP candidates' attack lines on each other to their advantage. They flooded Scottish social media with memes and clips like this.
Independence.
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 I have to say, I'm not really hearing a plan here. I'm hearing let's just do everything the same again.
Well, Humza, you've had a number of jobs in government. When you were Transport Minister, the trains were never on time.
People don't have jobs to move into, and as a result, hollow out communities across Scotland.
When you were Justice Minister, the police were strained to breaking point.
I've got the patience for that.
I also want to have confidence.
I know you haven't had a public service delivery job.
And now, as Health Minister, we've got record high waiting times. 1 in 4 children are currently in poverty. They are going to bed hungry. They are going to bed cold tonight.
It's a disgrace that we're in this situation.
And it's not worked. No, it's not worked.
How can anybody trust you to stand up for the Scottish people?
Crisis when it comes to our public services and the cost of living.
And so far, none of you has told me how you're going to deliver. None of you has told your membership how you're going to deliver it.
We've got to work on that central bank.
So you don't know how much that would cost.
More of the same is not a manifesto. It's an acceptance of mediocrity.
The SNP has lost its way.
It's time for change.
I mean, it's good advert. I mean, they had a lot of material to work with. Dahlia, I mean, it's interesting. The SNP are actually still incredibly popular, right? By a long way, the most popular party in Scotland. People generally quite satisfied with the government in Holyrood. And now you've got these three candidates like ripping each other to shreds. I mean, it sounds like the kind of leadership debate you'd have if you'd just lost a historic election, not when you're like in government and relatively popular. Like, what's going on?
I cannot believe that a debate in that format was allowed to go ahead because no candidate benefits from that. Like they could have easily, all of them said, we're obviously not going to do that because it's going to produce exactly what it did produce, which is the perfect attack lines. Their opponents, honestly, it's like the political judgment is unbelievable, and no one likes to feel like they're governed by a party that is in turmoil. I mean, those of us sitting in England can absolutely say that it's a complete shit show to have, a governing party that can't deliver on the basic functions of government because they are too busy trying to resolve these internal crises. So honestly, like that debate format was an absolutely terrible judgment call. And I don't understand how that was allowed to go ahead. That was a complete liability for the SNP as a party. And it also really makes me wonder, like, how Nicola Sturgeon was holding this whole thing together. This might be kind of my England centrism speaking, and I apologize for that. I hate it too. But from the outside, it really looked like the SNP were quite a cohesive power bloc. That wouldn't mean, obviously, that there weren't disagreements or like different factions within the party. But it certainly looked like a bit more of a unified political force than it appeared in those clips. And it makes me wonder why Nicola, we still don't have a full answer really on why Nicola Sturgeon decided to leave, and especially why she decided to leave so abruptly, and whilst probably knowing that this giant can of worms was going to be opened. So either way, I mean, it feels like the SNP are kind of squandering what was a really, a kind of political majority that most parties would dream of. And I'm not really sure why they're doing it, really.